All right, guys, we're going to finish the book. So, chapter 21, we left off, they were at Gloria Dump's house. Or, actually, they weren't at Gloria Dump's house, but they were planning the party for everyone in the community. All right, chapter 21. After I got Otis convinced to come, the rest of getting ready for the party was easy and fun. Me and Gloria decided to have the party at night, when it would be cooler. And the afternoon before, we worked in Gloria's kitchen and made egg salad sandwiches. We cut them up in triangles and cut off the crusts and put little toothpicks with frilly tops in them. Winn-Dixie sat in the kitchen and looked at us the whole time. He kept wagging his tail. "That dog thinks we making these sandwiches for him," said Gloria Dump. Winn-Dixie showed Gloria all his teeth. "These ain't for you," she told him. But when she thought I wasn't looking, she gave Winn-Dixie an egg salad sandwich without the toothpick. We also made punch. We mixed together orange juice and grapefruit juice and soda in a big bowl. Gloria called it Dump Punch. She said she was world famous for it, but I had never heard it before. The last thing we did was decorate the yard all up. I strung pink and orange and yellow crepe paper in the trees to make it look fancy. We also filled up paper bags with sand and put candles in them. And right before it was time for the party to start, I went around and lit all the candles. It turned Gloria Dump's yard into a fairyland. "Mm-hmm," said Gloria Dump, looking around. "Even somebody with bad eyes can tell it looks good." It did look pretty. So pretty that it made my heart feel funny. All swollen and full, and I wished desperately that I knew where my mama was so that she could come to the party too. Miss Franny Block was the first person to arrive. She was wearing a pretty green dress that was all shiny and shimmery, and she had on high-heeled shoes that made her wobble back and forth when she walked. And even when she was standing still, she still kind of swayed like she was standing on a boat. She was carrying a big glass bowl full of litmus lozenges. "I brought a little after-dinner treat," she said, handing the bowl to me. "Thank you," I said, and I put the bowl on the table next to the egg salad sandwiches and the punch. Then I introduced Miss Franny to Gloria, and they shook hands and said polite things to one another. And then Sweetie Pie's mom came by with Sweetie Pie. Sweetie Pie had a whole handful of pictures of dogs that she had cut out of magazines. "It's to help you with your theme," she said. "You can use them to decorate. I brung tape, too." And she started going around taping the pictures of the dogs to the trees and the chairs and the table. "She ain't talked about anything but this party all day long," said her mother. "Can you walk her home when it's over?" I promised that I would, and then I introduced Sweetie Pie to Miss Franny and to Gloria. And right after that, the preacher showed up. He was wearing a coat and a tie and looked real serious. He shook Gloria Dump's hand and Miss Franny Block's hand and said how pleased he was to meet them both and how he had heard nothing but good things about both of them. He patted Sweetie Pie on the head and said it was good to see her outside the church. And the whole time, Winn-Dixie was standing right in the middle of everyone, wagging his tail so hard that I thought for sure he would knock Miss Franny right off her heels. Amanda Wilkinson came, and she had her blonde hair all curled up, and she looked shy, which is shy and not as mean as usual. And I stood real close to her and introduced her to Gloria Dump. I was surprised how glad I was to see Amanda, and I wanted to tell her I knew about Carson. I wanted to tell her I understood about losing people, but I didn't say anything. I was just extra nice. We were all standing around smiling at one another and acting kind of nervous when a real screechy voice said, "Gertrude is a pretty bird!" Winn-Dixie's ears went straight up on his head, and he barked once and looked around. I looked too, but I didn't see Gertrude or Otis. "I'll be right back," I said to everyone, and me and Winn-Dixie went running around to the front of the house. And sure enough, standing there on the sidewalk was Otis. He had his guitar on his back and Gertrude on his shoulder, and in his hands he was holding the biggest jar of pickles I had ever seen in my life. "Otis," I said to him, "come on around back. That's where the party is." "Oh," he said, but he didn't move. He just stood there, holding on to his jar of pickles. "Dog!" screeched Gertrude. She flew off Otis's shoulder and landed on Winn-Dixie's head. "Oh, it's all right, Otis," I told him. "It's just a few people. Hardly any people at all." "Oh," said Otis again. He looked around like he was lost, and then he held up a jar of pickles. "I brought pickles," he said. "I saw them," I said. "It's just exactly what we needed. They will go perfect with egg salad sandwiches." And I talked to him real soft and gentle and low, like he was a wild animal that I was trying to get to take food out of my hand. He took one tiny step forward. "Come on," I whispered. I started walking, and Winn-Dixie followed me, and then I turned around, and I saw Otis was following me too. Chapter 22. Otis followed me all the way back into the backyard where the party was. Before he could run away, I introduced him to the preacher. "Daddy," I said, "this is Otis. He's the one who runs Gertrude's Pets. He's the one who plays the guitar so good." "How do you do?" said the preacher. He stuck his hand out to Otis. And Otis stood there and shuffled the big jar of pickles back and forth, trying to free up a hand to offer to the preacher. Finally, he ended up bending over and setting the jar down on the ground. But when he did that, his guitar slid forward and hit him in the head with a little boing sound. Sweetie Pie laughed and pointed at him like he was doing the whole thing on purpose just to amuse her. "Ouch," said Otis. He stood back up and took the guitar off his shoulder and put it down on the ground next to the jar of pickles. And then he wiped his hand on his pants and stuck it out to the preacher, who took it and said, "It sure is a pleasure to shake your hand." "Thank you," said Otis. I brought pickles." "I noticed," said the preacher. And after the preacher and Otis were done shaking hands, I introduced Otis to Miss Franny Block and to Amanda. And then I introduced him to Gloria Dump. Gloria took his hand and smiled at him, and Otis looked right into her eyes and smiled back. He smiled big. "I brought pickles for your party," Otis told her. "And I am so glad," she said. "It just ain't a party without pickles." Otis looked down at his big jar of pickles. His face was all red. "Opal," said Gloria, "when are them boys getting here?" "I don't know," I said it. I shrugged. I told them what time we were starting. What I didn't tell her was that they probably wouldn't be coming because they were afraid to go to a party at a witch's house. "Well," said Gloria, "we got egg salad sandwiches, we got dump punch, we got pickles, we got dog pictures, we got litmus lozenges, and we got a preacher who can bless this party for us." And Gloria Dump looked over at the preacher. He nodded his head at Gloria and cleared his throat and said, "Dear God, thank you for warm summer nights and candlelight and good food, but thank you most of all for friends. We appreciate the complicated and wonderful gifts you give us and each other, and we appreciate the task you put down before us, of loving each other the best we can, even as you love us. We pray in Christ's name, amen." "Amen," said Gloria Dump. "Amen," I whispered. "Gertrude!" croaked Gertrude. "Are we fixing to eat now?" Sweetie Pie asked. "Shh," said Amanda. Winn-Dixie sneezed. There was a far-off rumble of thunder. Uh-oh. I'm making a prediction. I thought at first that it was Winn-Dixie's stomach growling. "It ain't supposed to rain," said Gloria Dump. "They didn't predict no rain." "This dress is silk," said Miss Franny Block. "I can't get it wet." "Maybe we should go inside," said Amanda. The preacher looked up at the sky, and just then the rain came pouring down. Chapter 23. "Save the sandwiches!" Gloria Dump yelled to me. "Save the punch!" "I got my dog picture," screamed Sweetie Pie. She went running around, tearing off all the trees and all the chairs. "Don't worry," she kept shouting. "I got him." I grabbed the platter of egg salad sandwiches, and the preacher grabbed the punch, and we ran into the kitchen with them. And when I ran back outside, I saw that Amanda had hold of Miss Franny Block and was helping her into the house. Miss Franny was so teetery in her high heels that the rain would have knocked her right off if Amanda hadn't held on to her. I grabbed Gloria Dump's arm. "I'm all right," she said, but she put her hand on my arm and held on to me tight. I looked around the garden before we left. All the crepe paper was melted and the candles were out, and then I saw Otis. He was standing there by his jar of pickles, looking down at his feet. "Otis!" I hollered him over the rain. "Come on, we're going inside." When we got in the kitchen, Amanda and Miss Franny were laughing and shaking themselves out like a dog. "What a downpour," said Miss Franny. "Wasn't that something?" "That came right out of nowhere," said the preacher. "Hoo-wee," said Gloria. "Dog!" squawked Gertrude. I looked at her. She was sitting on the table. Yeah. "A dog!" squawked Gertrude. I looked at her. She was sitting on the kitchen table. The thunder was really booming and cracking. "Oh, no," I said. I looked around the kitchen. "Don't worry," said Sweetie Pie. "I saved the dog pictures. I got them right here." She waved around her wad of magazine pages. "Where's Winn-Dixie?" I shouted. "I forgot about him. I was thinking about the party and I forgot about Winn-Dixie. I forgot about protecting him from the thunder." "Now, Opal," said the preacher, "he's probably right out in the yard, hiding underneath a chair. Come on, you and I will go and look." "Hold on," said Glory Dump. "Let me get you a flashlight and some umbrellas." But I didn't want to wait. I went running out into the yard. I looked under the chairs and around the bushes and the trees. I called his name real loud. I felt like crying. It was my fault. I was supposed to hold on to him, and I forgot. "Opal!" I heard the preacher call. I looked up. He was standing on the porch with Gloria. Ann Dunlop and Stevie Dewberry were standing there too. "Your guests are here," said the preacher. "I don't care," I hollered. "Come on up here," Gloria Dump said, her voice all hard and serious. She shone her flashlight out at me. I walked up to the porch, and she handed me the flashlight. "Tell these boys." "Hey," she said, "tell them you are glad they came and that you will be right back just as soon as you find your dog." "Hey," I said, "thank you for coming. I just got to go find Winn-Dixie, and then I'll be right back." Stevie stared at me with his mouth wide open. "You want me to help?" Dunlop asked. I shook my head. I tried not to cry. "Come here, child," Glory Dump said. She reached for me and pulled me close to her and whispered in my ear, "There ain't no way you can hold on to something that wants to go. You understand? You can only love what you got while you got it." She squeezed me hard. "Good luck now," she called, as me and the preacher stepped off the porch and out into the rain. "Good luck," Miss Franny called out from the kitchen. "That dog ain't lost," I heard Sweetie Pie holler to somebody inside. "That dog's too smart to get lost." I turned around and looked back, and the last thing I saw was the porch light shining on Dunlap Dewberry's bald head. It made me sad, him standing on Gloria's porch, his bald head glowing. Dunlap saw me looking, and he raised up his hand and waved to me. I didn't wave back. Chapter 24. Me and the preacher started walking and calling Winn-Dixie's name. I was glad it was raining so hard, because it made it easy to cry. I cried and cried and cried, and the whole time I was calling for Winn-Dixie. "Winn-Dixie!" I screamed. "Winn-Dixie!" the preacher shouted, and then he whistled loud and long, but Winn-Dixie didn't show up. We walked all through downtown. We walked past the Dewberry's house and the Herman W. Block Memorial Library and Sweetie Pie's yellow house and Gertrude's Pets. We walked out to Friendly Quarters Trailer Park and looked underneath our trailer. We walked all the way out to the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi. We walked past the railroad tracks and right on down Highway 50. Cars were rushing past us with their taillights glowed red, like mean eyes staring at us. "Daddy," I said, "Daddy, what if we got run over?" "Opal," the preacher said, "we can't worry about what might have happened. All we can do is keep looking." We walked and walked, and in my head, I started on a list of 10 things that I knew about Winn-Dixie. Things I could write a book on. Things I could write on big old posters and put up around the neighborhood. Things that would help people look for him. Number 1 was that he had a pathological fear of thunderstorms. Number 2, when he liked to smile, Number 2 was when he liked to smile using all his teeth. Number 3 was he could run fast. Number 4 was that he snored. Number 5 was that he could catch mice without squishing them to death. Number 6 was he liked to meet people. Number 7 was he liked to eat peanut butter. Number 8 was he couldn't stand to be left alone. Number 9 was he liked to sit on couches and sleep in beds. Number 10 was he didn't mind going to church. I kept on going over and over the list in my head. I memorized it the same way I had memorized the list of 10 things about my mama. I memorized it so if I didn't find him, I would have some part of him to hold on to. But at the same time, I thought of something I had never thought of before, and that was that a list of things couldn't even begin to show somebody the real Winn-Dixie. Just like a list of 10 things couldn't ever get me to know my mama. And thinking about that made me cry even more. Me and the preacher looked for a long time, and finally, he said we had to quit. "But Daddy," I said, "Winn-Dixie's out there somewhere. We can't leave him." "Opal," the preacher said, "we have looked, and there's only so much looking we can do." "I can't believe you're going to give up," I told him. India Opal, the preacher said, rubbing his nose. Don't argue with me. I stood and stared at him. The rain had let up some. It was mostly a drizzle now. It's time to head back, the preacher said. No, I told him. You go ahead and go, but I'm going to keep on looking. Opal, the preacher said in a real small voice, it's time to give up. I just want to stop here just for a second. If we're thinking about that roller coaster, you know, everything up to this point, we've been going on the hill. Where are we now in the roller coaster? Are we still going up? Are we at the top? Or are we on our way down? This, boys and girls, is right at the top. What do we call that? It's called the climax. So the rising actions were rising. Everything before this point has been the rising action. At the top of the roller coaster, that's called the climax. And we're towards the end of the book. Remember I said the climax is always towards the end of the book because it's much faster going down than it is going up a roller coaster. Okay. Opal, the preacher said in a real soft voice, it's time to give up. You always give up, I shouted. You're always pulling your head inside your stupid old turtle shell. I bet you didn't even go out looking for my mama when she left. I bet you just let her run off too. Baby, the preacher said, I couldn't stop her. I tried. Don't you think I wanted her to stay too? Don't you think I miss her every day? He spread his arms out wide and then dropped them to his sides. I tried, he said. I tried. Then he did something I couldn't believe. He started to cry. The preacher was crying. His shoulders were moving up and down, and he was making snuffly noises. And don't believe that losing Winn-Dixie doesn't upset me as much as it does you, he said. I love that dog. I love him too. Daddy, I said. I went and wrapped my arms around his waist. He was crying so hard he was shaking. It's all right, I told him. It's okay. Shh. I said to him like he was a scared little kid. Everything will be okay. We stood there hugging and rocking back and forth, and after a while the preacher stopped shaking, and I still held on to him. And I finally got the nerve to ask the question I wanted to ask. Do you think she's ever going to come back? I whispered. No, the preacher said. No, I don't. I've hoped and I've prayed and I've dreamed about it for years, but I don't think she'll ever come back. Who are they talking about now? Opal's mom, right? Gloria says that you can't hold on to anything. That you can only love what you've got while you've got it. She's right, the preacher said. Gloria Dump is right. I'm not ready to let go of Winn-Dixie, I said. I'd forgotten about him for a minute, what with thinking about my mama. We'll keep looking, said the preacher. The two of us will keep looking for him. But do you know what? I just realized something, Indy Opal. When I told you your mom took everything with her, I forgot one thing. One very important thing that she left behind. What? I asked. You, he said. Thank God your mama left me you. And he hugged me tighter. I'm glad I've got you too, I told him. And I meant it. I took hold of his hand and we started walking back into town, calling and whistling for Winn-Dixie the whole way. Chapter 25. We heard the music before we even got to Gloria Dump's house. We heard it almost a block away. It was guitar playing and singing and clapping. I wonder what's going on, my father said. We walked up Gloria's sidewalk and around back, through her yard and into her kitchen. What we saw was Otis playing his guitar, and Miss Franny and Gloria sitting there smiling and singing, and Gloria holding Sweetie Pie in her lap. Amanda and Dunlap and Stevie were sitting on the kitchen floor, clapping along and having the best possible time. Even Amanda was smiling. I couldn't believe they were so happy when Winn-Dixie was missing. We didn't find him, I shouted at them. The music stopped, and Gloria Dump looked at me and said, Child, we know you didn't find him. You didn't find him because he was right here all along. She took her cane and poked at something under her chair. Come on out of here, she said. There was a snuffle and a sigh. He's asleep, she said. He's plumb wore out. She poked around with her cane again, and Winn-Dixie stood up from underneath her chair and yawned. Winn-Dixie, I hollered. Dog, Gertrude squawked, and Winn-Dixie wagged his tail and showed me all his teeth and sneezed. I went pushing past everybody. I dropped to the floor and wrapped my arms around him. Where have you been? I asked him. He yawned again. How did you find him? I asked. Now there's a story, said Miss Franny. Gloria, why don't you tell it? Well, said Gloria Dump, we was all just sitting around here waiting on you two. And after I convinced these Dewberry boys that I ain't no scary witch all full of spells and potions. She ain't no witch, Stevie said. He shook his bald head. He looked kind of disappointed. Naw, said Dunlap. She ain't. And if she was, she would have turned us into toads by now. He grinned. I could have told you that she wasn't a witch. Witches don't exist, said Amanda. They're just myths. All right now, said Gloria. What happened was we got through all them witchy things, and then Franny said, why don't we have a little music while we wait for you two to get back? And so Otis played his guitar. And ooh-wee, there ain't a song he don't know. And if he don't know it, he can pick it up right quick if you hum it to him. He has a gift. Gloria stopped and smiled over at Otis, and he smiled back. He looked all lit up from inside. Tell what happened, Sweetie Pie said. Tell about the dog. So, said Gloria, Franny and me were starting thinking about all these songs we knew from when we was girls. We got Otis to play them, and we started singing them, teaching the words to these children. And then somebody sneezed, Sweetie Pie shouted. That's right, said Gloria. Somebody sneezed, and it wasn't none of us. So we looked around, wondering who did, thinking that maybe we got a burglar in the house. We looked around, and we didn't see nothing. So we started into singing again. And sure enough, there was another big achoo. Sounded like it was coming from my bedroom. So I sent Otis in there. I said, Otis, go on in there and see who is sneezing. So Otis went, and do you know what he found? I shook my head. Winn-Dixie, shouted Sweetie Pie. That dog of yours was all hid underneath my bed, squeezed under there like the world was about to end. But he was smiling like a fool every time he heard Otis play his guitar, smiling so hard that he sneezed. My daddy laughed. It is true, said Miss Franny. It's the truth, said Stevie. Dunlap nodded and smiled right at me. So, Gloria Dump said, Otis played his guitar right to that dog, and a little bit at a time, Winn-Dixie kept creeping out from underneath the bed. He was covered in dust, said Amanda. He looked like a ghost, said Dunlop. Yeah, said Sweetie Pie, just like a ghost. Mm-hmm, said Gloria. Looked just like a ghost. Anyway, the storm stopped after a while, and your dog settled in under my chair and fell asleep. And that's where he's been ever since. Just waiting on you to come back and find him. Winn-Dixie, I said. I hugged him so tight he wheezed. We were out there whistling and calling for you, and you were right here all along. Thank you, I said to everybody. Well, said Gloria Dunn, we didn't do nothing. We just sat here and waited and sang some songs. We all got to be good friends. Now, the punch ain't nothing but water, and the egg salad sandwiches got tore up by the rain. You got to eat them with a spoon if you want egg salad. But we got pickles to eat, and litmus lozenges, and we still got a party going on. My dad pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down. Otis, he said, do you know any hymns? I know some, said Otis. You hum it, said Miss Franny, nodding her head, and he can play it. So my daddy started humming something, and Otis started picking it out on his guitar, and Winn-Dixie wagged his tail and laid back down underneath Gloria's chair. I looked around the room at all the different faces, and I felt my heart swell up inside me swell up inside me with pure happiness. I'll be back in a minute, I said. But they were all singing now and laughing, and Winn-Dixie was snoring, so no one heard me. Chapter 26. So where are we on the roller coaster now? We're on the way down. We're on the way down. Yep. Following action. Chapter 26. Outside, the rain had stopped and the clouds had gone away, and the sky was so clear it seemed like I could see every star ever made. I walked all the way to the back of Gloria Dump's yard. I walked back there and looked at her mistake tree. The bottles were quiet. There wasn't a breeze, so they were just hanging there. I looked at the tree, and then I looked up at the sky. Mama, I said, just like she was standing right beside me, I know 10 things about you, and that's not enough. That's not near enough. But Daddy's going to tell me more. I know he will, now that he knows you're not coming back. He misses you and I miss you, but my heart doesn't feel empty anymore. It's full all the way up. I'll still think about you, I promise, but probably not as much as I did this summer. That's what I said the night underneath Gloria Dump's mistake tree. And after I was done saying it, I stood there just staring up at the sky, looking at the constellations and the planets, and then I remembered my own tree, the one Gloria Dump had helped me plant. Remember that tree? I hadn't looked at it for a long time. I went crawling around on my hands and knees searching for it, and when I found it, I was surprised at how much it had grown. It was still small. It still looked more like a plant than a tree, but the leaves and the branches felt real strong and good and right. And I was down there on my knees when I heard a voice say, "Are you praying?" I looked up. It was Dunlop. "No," I said. "I'm not praying. I'm thinking." He crossed his arms and looked down at me. "What about?" he asked. "All kinds of different things," I said. "I'm sorry that I called you and Stevie bald-headed babies." "That's all right," he said. "Gloria told me to come out here and get you." "I told you she wasn't a witch." "I know," he said. "I knew it all along. I was just teasing you." "Oh," I said. I looked at him close. It was hard to see him good in the dark yard. "Ain't you going to stand up?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. And then he surprised me. He did something I never in a million years thought a Dewberry boy would do. He held out his hand to help me up, and I took it. I let him pull me up to my feet. "I'll race you back to the house," Dunlop said, and he started to run. "Okay," I shouted, "but I'm warning you, I'm fast." We ran, and I beat him. I touched the corner of Gloria Dump's house right before he did. "You shouldn't be running around in the dark," said Amanda. She was standing on the porch looking at us. "You could trip over something." "Ah, Amanda," said Dunlop, and he shook his head. "Ah, Amanda," I said too. And then I remembered Carson, and I felt bad for her. I went up to the porch and took a hold of her hand and pulled on her. "Come on," I said, "let's go inside." "India Opal," Daddy said when me and Amanda Dunlop walked in. "Are you here to sing some songs with us?" "Yes, sir," I said. "Only I don't know that many songs." "We'll teach you," he said, and he smiled at me real big. It was a good thing to see. "That's right," said Gloria Dump. "We will." Sweetie Pie was still sitting on her lap, but her eyes were closed. "Care for a litmus lozenge?" Miss Franny asked, passing around the bowl. "Thank you," I told her. I took a litmus lozenge and unwrapped it and put it in my mouth. "Do you want a pickle?" Otis asked, holding up his big jar of pickles. "No, thank you," I said. "Not right now." Winn-Dixie came out from underneath Gloria Dump's chair. He sat down next to me and leaned into me the same way I was leaning into my daddy. And Amanda stood right there beside me, and when I looked over at her, she didn't look pinch-faced at me at all. Dunlop cracked his knuckles and said, "Well, are we going to sing or what?" "Yeah," Stevie echoed. "Are we going to sing or what?" "Let's sing," said Sweetie Pie, opening her eyes and sitting up straight. "Let's sing for the dog." Otis laughed and strummed his guitar, and the flavor of litmus lozenge opened in my mouth like a flower blooming, all sweet and sad. And then Otis and Gloria and Stevie and Miss Franny and Dunlop and Amanda and Sweetie Pie and my daddy all started to sing a song. And I listened careful so I could learn it right. The end. Oh, I just love that book. Oh, every year I read it, I just love it. I hope you did too. All right. Till our next read aloud. Have a good night.